Starters are interesting and Gen 1 seems to hold some favourites. So how will they fare in a hardcore Nuzlocke of their games? Rules are on screen right now, you can pause to have a look, and let's get right into the run. Start off as always with Oak trying to block us because we wanted to go box some Rattata. And from there, I decide to pick Bulbasaur as it's the only one that is super effective against the first two gyms. He gets the name of Beans and we can now carry on our adventure. First up, we become a delivery boy. Yeah, he gives us a Pokemon for us to become a glorified mailman. We did like any other mailman and threw the package away and head straight on to the first gym. I'm quite a low level and I did forget to heal, so you might notice it gets really close here as, you know, they're only 4 times weak to Vine Whip. The low level was actually planned as we don't necessarily want to over level because that'll mean we can't use our Bulbasaur from that point. And with how much XP there is in the early game, there just wasn't much chance that we would be able to get away without over leveling him if we didn't do this. Anyways, also because of this, I decided after the first 2 gyms, that's when I can get the next starter. Therefore, we go and catch ourselves a Charmander. He ends up being given the name Lewis and can very quickly evolve from that point on. Beans also manages to evolve in this time period, and then we get the joy of picking up the Helix fossil, but unfortunately for us, it's not a starter, so it's gonna go in the trash. That means we can now carry on to the second gym leader in Misty. We obviously start off with Beans, who can one-shot the Staryu with 1 Vine Whip. Now his Starmie's pretty powerful, so I tried to put it to sleep, but I actually miss. Thankfully, on the next turn, we managed to hit that and then hit the subsequent Leech Seed. From that point on, we're free to just Vine Whip away until it's taken down, and that gives us the second gym badge. I honestly don't even think I needed to put it to sleep, but I was just trying to be a bit safe. We then have to go in and do the rival fight just before Nugget Bridge. I start off with Lewis as Beans is actually weak to the Pidgeotto, so I can just start using Embers, and it only takes us 3 to take the Pidgeotto down. The Rattata comes out, so I go for an Ember, but unfortunately this actually burns. This means it activates its Guts ability and actually does a lot more damage than it was supposed to. And another unfortunate thing is this thing knows Quick Attack, so it does get a hit off before we manage to take it down with the second Ember. He then sends out his Charmander, who can't really do much damage to us, so I take it down using 1 Ember and 1 Mega Kick. After this, all that's left is his Abra, and this thing only knows Teleport at this point, so it goes down incredibly easily. We then run into some sort of furry. He transformed himself into an actual animal. I knew they dressed up, but this is going a bit far. And since we've got the second gym done, that means we can go and catch ourselves a nice little Squirtle. We end up calling him Renee, and he evolves incredibly quickly as he only needs to get to level 16. We then get to board the SS Anne for yet another rival fight. I start off with our new team member who does manage to get the Pidgeotto low, but unfortunately the sand attacks mean I'm no longer hitting attacks, therefore I switch into Lewis. He manages to take the Pidgeotto out in 2 hits, but we did get sand attacked and it caused us to miss, meaning we took more damage than we were supposed to. The Raticate then comes out and we got properly shafted by this sand attack as we missed yet another Ember, so we need to switch Beans in. Beans then gets to use a Leech Seed so we can drain its attack before missing a Sleep Powder. Thankfully it hits on the next turn, but it's still annoying we've missed so much. Since he's still got that Charmeleon in the back, I opt to bring Renee out. Thankfully for us, the Raticate stays asleep long enough for us to take it out, and then comes his Kadabra. It uses Disable, which disables our Water Gun as I go for a bite. By the time we eventually take it down, we're on 20 health because it managed to get a Confusion, and the Charmeleon is out, but we can't use Water Gun because it's still disabled. Now, I figure it's probably safe to switch in Beans as there's no chance he's going to go for Ember, but he does do that and it does do some serious damage. Thankfully, I wasn't actually planning on using Beans for attacking, I was just using him to get rid of the disable on my Water Gun, so Renee comes back out. Water Gun does good damage, but unfortunately he's faster than us and we are in range of getting taken out by him. Therefore, I decide to bring Lewis out as he can take him down in 2 hits. He does get knocked to just 2 health, but thankfully we're able to take him down as we're faster than him. That was really close, and a crit there could have honestly ended the entire run. And for our reward of beating that, we get to rub an old man's back. First I was a mailman, now I'm a masseuse, what's going on? Next up we have Surge. He starts off with Voltorb as I start off with Beans. Voltorb is faster than us, so can get a shockwave off, and it crits us. But thankfully for us, we've got Razor Leaf, high crit move, so we crit and take it out in 1. After that, we've got the Pikachu, and at this level, we know it's going to be one-shot by Razor Leaf. We then have the Raichu, and he manages to set up a double team as we hit a Sleep Powder. We then manage to hit a Leech Seed, but he does use a full heal to heal himself up. After that, we try and Sleep Powder again, but miss. Thankfully though, on the second turn, it does hit. From this point, it's a fairly simple process of us just Razor Leafing. Even when he wakes up, the Leech Seed is giving us that much health back that it's really doing next to nothing to us. Now, I kind of want to get a couple of moves from the game corner, so I decide just to do the Team Rocket bit and collect as many items as I can while I'm there so I can sell them. While we're there, we do have to take down Giovanni, and his Onyx and Rhyhorn go down incredibly easy, just at 1 Razor Leaf apiece. Then out comes his Kangaskhan. Now, I wanted to put this thing asleep, and it actually took me 5 turns in order to do it. We either missed or flinched. By the time we've taken 5 turns worth of damage though, we did get it off. I then set up a Leech Seed and decide it's time to switch out. I chose Renee, who does take more than half damage from the Mega Kick that it hits, but thankfully we get knocked out of the range because the Leech Seed heals us up. He then decides instead of attacking us, he wants to use Tail Whip twice, so we managed to get him decently low, but at this point 1 Mega Kick is going to take us out, so I switch into Lewis. The Mega Punch does do some good damage, but thankfully we're faster and 1 Ember is enough to finish it off. That was incredibly close, which is mental, because had Ivysaur just hit his Sleep Powders, it would have been a doddle. Unfortunately, because all my Pokemon gain XP quite quickly, I didn't actually manage to quite raise the funds before we had to go and take on the next gym leader. This means I can't get Flamethrower at this point, so I've got to hope Ember's enough. Unfortunately for me, going into this gym battle though, I did actually mess up. I was supposed to start off with Beans, but I accidentally started off with Lewis. Therefore, my first turn, I have to switch into Beans. This is very unfortunate, as it does mean we get paralyzed by a Stun Spore before we can do anything. It uses Acid, which does some okay damage, as I use a Sleep Powder to put it to sleep. And that means we can now switch into Lewis, as he's gonna 2-shot it. Or he hits the lowest range on one of the attacks and it survives on a Slither. This means she's gonna heal it up so we can get another Ember off. But then I know they're gonna go for Stun Spore and we can't risk getting paralyzed here, so we just switch in Beans as he's already paralyzed, so it does nothing. The first turn he's in, we do get stuck in paralysis, but thankfully the second time we manage to get another Sleep Powder off. This means all we need to do is switch into Lewis and it's free to take this Victory Bell down from this point. We do level up to 30, but it doesn't count as going over the level cap as we're already in the gym battle. The Tangela does go down to 2 Embers, but before we manage to take it down, it has poisoned us. We then have her Vileplume come out, and although it can't really do much damage to us, the poison adds to it, so we do actually take a decent chunk. Thankfully though, it's only 3 shots, so we only take 2 lots of attack and we can finish it off. Pretty frustrating this Charmeleon has low special attack, as we would have swept this gym had he not. We then give a police guard a cup of tea, and somehow he's going to share 1 cup of tea with loads of other guards. They must only be having a sip each, so they can't have been that thirsty. After that, we can head up the Pokemon Tower, where we get a flute for saving an old man. At least he didn't hold us up telling us his life story. But what did hold me up was the fact I forgot to go and get a bike. Now, Fly makes it easy to travel around, so I decide it's time for Lewis to evolve into his final form, Charizard. And with that, we can mosey on through and get on the cycling road. A little bit later, Renee evolves into Blastoise, and Beans becomes Venusaur, meaning we've now got our completely evolved team. With all 3 of these beasts, we're now ready to take on the Poison Gym Leader, Koga. I start off with Beans and use Sleep Powder to put the coughing asleep, but I do actually end up one-shotting it with Flamethrower when I bring Lewis in, so it's kind of pointless. Next up, we've got the Muck, which we need to hit 3 Flamethrowers against. And it does spend its time setting up 2 minimizes, but thankfully this only causes us to miss 1 time. Next up is another Coughing, but we already know we one-shot it. And then out comes the Wheezing. Now, we're not actually at full health here, so I'm a bit scared of an explosion taking us out. Therefore, I bring in Beans as he's a bit tanky. Beans yet again misses a Sleep Powder, but it does hit the second one, giving us time to set up a Leech Seed. Unfortunately though, we're at about half health by the time this happens, and again, an explosion is really scary, therefore I decide to bring Renee in. He does manage to Toxic us and actually heal up, but thankfully for us, the Leech Seed means it only takes 2 surfs for him to be taken out. And with that, we can head to Sylph Tower, where we have to take down our rival yet again. He starts off with Pidgeot, as I start off with Lewis, and he uses a Feather Dance, but it doesn't matter as we're using special moves. 2 Flamethrowers, take it down. He then brings in Gyarados, which obviously we're not a good matchup for, so I switch Beans in. I get Beans to hit a Leech Seed, and then I notice its attack isn't doing much more than we're healing, so we can just finish it off with a few Razor Leafs. He then has Execute come out, and I do miss a Sleep Powder, causing him to be able to get a Stun Spore off and stun us. The chance of missing or being paralyzed is actually quite high at this point, therefore I bring in another Pokemon. Unfortunately for me though, Lewis, as he comes in, gets confused by confusion, so I switch out back into Beans to stop him from stunning us. I then bring Lewis out, and he yet again gets confused by confusion. What are the chances? 2 turns in a row. Thankfully, this third time I do this little switch out, switch in, he doesn't get confused and we can finish it off with one flamethrower. He then sends out his Alakazam, and although it does manage to set up a Reflect, it still goes down to only 2 wing attacks. After this, he's got Charizard, so we bring Renee in, who can just surf his way into victory. I'll tell you what though, that Charizard was actually doing some pretty major damage to us. At this point, we have literally zero worries about Giovanni because we're fully evolved and half his Pokemon are weak to both grass and water. President of the Sylph Company was that impressed he gave us a free Master Ball. And with that, we are good to try and take on Sabrina. Now, although most of Sabrina's Pokemon are actually pretty powerful, they're all incredibly defensively weak. This means all I really need to do is use Wing Attack until the Alakazam comes out. We don't even take a shred of damage before then. After that, I opt to use Fly, but it's not quite enough to take it out, and she does heal up, but it only takes us 2 more Wing Attacks, and she is gone. What an incredibly straightforward gym. Very anticlimactic. After this though, we do have Blaine, and unfortunately for him, we have Renee, who knows Rain Dance. Therefore, all we do is set up Rain Dance and then surf through his entire team. Not even his Beast of an Arcanine could do anything against our power. There's very little story from this point, so we'll just go straight on to the 8th gym. And you remember the strategy we used against Blaine? Well, it works pretty good against Giovanni as well. We're actually still underneath the level cap, and you can just see we're obliterating his entire team just using rain boosted surfs. The rain does come out by we get to his ace Pokemon in Rhyhorn that's level 50, but it's 4 times weak to water, so we just fly on through it. Next up, we want to head on to the Elite Four, but our rival does get in our way. He leads with Pidgeotto as I lead with Lewis, and I do manage to finish it off using only 2 flamethrowers. He then sends out Gyarados, so I opt to bring Beans in. Beans hits its Sleep Powder and then goes for Growth. I use Razor Leaf and notice this won't quite beat a 2-shot, therefore I opt to use another Growth before finishing it off. He then sends out Alakazam, and I know this thing can't kill us in 1 hit, therefore I use 1 Razor Leaf against it, which knocks it to half health. It did end up using Calm Mind though, which means I cannot stay in, therefore I have to bring Lewis out. Lewis does take some extreme damage but holds on with 20 health, and that means all I need to do is hit Wing Attack and the Alakazam is out of here. We then have the Rhyhorn come out, so I decide to switch Beans back in and finish it off with 1 Razor Leaf. This obviously prompts him to bring his Charizard out, so Renee actually needs to make a showing in this battle. The Charizard ends up going down to 2 Surfs, and then his Execute comes out. We get off a Strength, but he does get off a Stun Spore, meaning we can't really stay in, so we need to switch into Beans. From there, he charges up a Solar Beam, which means it's free because we can take him down in 2 hits, and there is not a chance Solar Beam is doing anything to Beans. That's his last Pokemon though, so we're now good to carry on. First Elite Four member we have to face is Lorelei. We hit a Sleep Powder on the Dugong and then go for a Growth while it's asleep. This knocks it into healing range, meaning we're free to set up 1 more Growth and we don't have to worry about waking up and getting attacked. With 2 Growths, both the Slowbro and the Lapras do go down in only 1 Razor Leaf, but the Jinx will not, therefore we need to bring Lewis out. Unfortunately for us, on the switching we do get Lovely Kiss, which puts us to sleep, and we can't actually wake up before we're knocked into range of being taken out. Since it's using Ice Punch, we can only safely switch into Renee, so we do that, but we do get put asleep after we hit a Strength. Thankfully though, it can't do much damage to us, and unlike the Charizard, we can wake up and then finish it off with a 2nd Strength. After this, all that's left is the Cloyster, and the only thing we need to worry about is hail damage doing stuff to us, but we have Rain Dance, so all I need to do is use Rain Dance anytime he uses hail, and we're no longer taking chip damage. Plus, Cloyster's only attacking move is Dive, so it's not going to take us out, therefore we have won this battle. Next up, we have the joke of the Elite Four, which is Bruno. Start off with Beans, who obviously takes down the Onyx in only 1 Razor Leaf. From there, he brings up his Hitmonchan, and although it will lower our speed with Rock Tomb, using Growth is the wise thing to do here. Once that's maxed out, all we need to do is use a Synthesis to be somewhat healthy and finish it off with a Razor Leaf. Hitmonlee is the next Pokemon that we take down in our destructive path, and it does manage to get a hit off, but it only does about 1/3 of our health. Finally, we have the Onyx, and although we do take it out with 1 Razor Leaf, it actually crits its Earthquake, meaning it's not safe to stop in once the Machamp comes. The one I opt to bring in is Renee, who sets up a Rain Dance and then uses a Surf, but does get crit by a Cross Chop, meaning he's no longer safe to stay in. Thankfully though, I know he's going to go for a cross chop, and that's not going to damage the flying type in Charizard, so we can just use that and finish it off. 2 crits from Bruno though, that made it quite scary. Next up we have Agatha, who starts off with a Gengar as I start off with Renee. I set up a Rain Dance and then a Surf which knocks it low, but unfortunately for us it sets up a Toxic because of this. And because she heals, it actually takes 2 more Surfs to take it out, meaning Poison has stacked up 2 more times. This means that although we do manage to knock the Golbat low, we actually can't stay in to carry on attacking it once we're done with this. I opt to bring in Lewis, who manages to finish it off, and then the Arbok comes out, but that thing stands no chance against 2 flamethrowers. She then sends in another Gengar, but it doesn't manage to stand up to us at all, as we just use a couple of flamethrowers and it's gone down. Thankfully though, it did knock us into Blaze. Normally Flamethrower wouldn't one-hit KO the Haunter, but once you're in Blaze it does. For those curious about Blaze, it's an ability where your fire type attacks get upped if you're less than 1/3 of your health. After this, we have the final Elite Four member in Lance. I start off with Beans and put his Gyarados to sleep. However, it literally doesn't matter as he wakes up the very next turn. Now, I don't really want to chance a miss on Sleep Powder when he's doing this much damage, therefore, while I'm setting up my growths, I just use Synthesis to keep me healthy. Once I've set up enough, I know I can take it down using 1 Razor Leaf, so that's exactly what I do. We then have the Aerodactyl come out, which is the reason for the growths. I need to be able to one-shot this as it's extremely powerful and I don't want to risk an Ancient Power boost. Luckily, Venusaur's powerful enough to do that once you've boosted it special enough. And after that, he sends out Dragonite. Now, we're pretty low at this point, so I opt to switch into Renee, who have actually taught Ice Beam at this point. Shockingly, it doesn't actually one-shot the Dragonite, so we have to use 2 of them to take it down. Then out comes his Dragonair. The first thing it does is paralyze us as we go for an Ice Beam. He then uses a full restore, but we get stuck in paralysis, so we don't manage to take it out. After this, he opts to use Outrage, and we just try and use Ice Beam. Unfortunately for us though, we do get paralyzed yet again, so we can't stay in as we'll be taken out. Fortunately for us though, we haven't used Lewis yet, so we bring him in. And even more unfortunately, Lewis can't 2-shot this Dragonair once it's healed to full, so he gets paralyzed as well before we manage to take it out. This means we're slower than the other Dragonair, so normally we would have been able to knock it low and finish it off, but instead all we could do was knock it low and be knocked low enough ourselves where we'll be taken out on the next turn. This means we have to bring in Beans, the only one of our Pokemon not paralyzed, and thankfully because of that, it's faster than this Dragonair and can finish it off. That double paralysis really did cost us. We almost lost 2 Pokemon just because of it. And with that, we are led on to the penultimate battle. Who will win, me or Root? As always in these battles, he starts off with his Pidgeot and I start off with Lewis, who uses a flamethrower and burns him. Not that that really matters as it can't do major damage to us and does go down to 2 hits anyway. He then sends out his Gyarados, and you have seen this strategy time and time again. We put him to sleep and we use Growth until we're maxed out on our special attack. When he wakes up, he then starts going for Thrash, and as I go for a Sleep Powder, I actually miss and get knocked incredibly low. It's not worth trying to chance another Sleep Powder, therefore I opt to go for Synthesis instead. I then have to use this strategy where I just hold off till he hits himself before finishing him off with a second Razor Leaf. He then sends in Alakazam. Now at this point I'm not going to get a safe switch in, so I opt to just sack him, but thankfully when he hits us we survive on 3 health, meaning we one-shot it. However, unfortunately for Beans, that doesn't mean we're going to have to let him live. We can't safely switch into the Charizard because it does some pretty good damage, so we have to sack him. This gives us a free switch in into Renee, and we can take him down using 2 Surfs. As you can see though, he doesn't miss any of his Fire Blasts, and they do some pretty major damage to us, so a free switch in here was not on the cards. After that, he then brings out his Exeggutor, and this thing knows Giga Drain and will take Renee out, therefore we need to bring Lewis in. And although the Exeggutor does go down to 1 hit, it doesn't mean we're safe as it knows a Rock type move. Obviously, with Renee being as low as he can, we couldn't switch in and finish it off this way, so we just had to let go with the sack and maybe get a bit of chip damage with him. Thankfully though, Rhydon is 4 times weak to Surf, so that does mean we managed to finish him off and beat our rival. Honestly, that was a lot of fun, and there wasn't really many moments where I actually struggled that much. These Pokemon are just pretty powerful, and it goes to show why you only get 1. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed, and goodbye.